So right after the show on Friday, news broke. So this is not actually new news, but it is important news, and we've not reacted to it yet, that Max Holloway would not be fighting Alexander Volkanovski at their upcoming third bout to decide one of the most important fights in featherweight history. He is injured. He will not be taking place. So they are looking for a replacement. Now, some of these guys threw their name in the hat, BC. Some of them had their names sort of introduced as part of being involved in the news cycle. Here's the question we're going to start with today. I'm going to read you these names: Josh Emmett, Korean Zombie, Yair Rodriguez, Charles Oliveira, and Henry Cejudo. These are the 5 names that have kind of been circulating around Alexander Volkanovski, who is trying to stay on the same competitive frequency, the same timeline.
Before you tee this up, Volkanovski, did you see the cryptic tweet he had that involved the word lightweight? Because the reason why Charles Oliveira is on this list is because he came out and said, look, I can make 145 easy. Yes. I'll move down and fight for the second title. Why would Volkanovski tweet something about lightweight? Is there a possibility for him to move up to try to fight for a second title? Maybe,
but for now, I think he's trying to defend his featherweight belt. So let's stick with that for just a moment if we can. BC, of the 5 names I read, let us assume to start this conversation that you could make all 5 of those fights equally.
Yes.
Which one should UFC make?
You're not going to want to hear my answer.
I'm asking you because I want to hear your answer.
I was just going to wait till like the staff could.
Yeah, I mean, if they can talk more, that'd be great. But
I like that they moved the control room from the control room to like right here. Like,
guys, we're going to actually come from the other side of closed doors. But we're just going to keep talking the same.
Yeah, all right. Okay. It's Henry Cejudo. Because here's the deal. When a fight falls out like this, you in best case scenario would go to the next most deserving, obvious big name. I think at this point in this division, with Ortega having lost and a little bit of a reshuffling here, it's a deep division, there's many big names, but I don't think there's that one name who deserves it most above all others. So to fill time, Luke, to still have a co-main event or pay-per-view main event, you have the opportunity of kind of breaking glass and bringing in celebrity. That's what this Henry Cejudo fight is. It wouldn't disrupt the momentum of the top of the division as we're seeing at bantamweight, where there's more of a roadblock. It's like, can we just get that Sterling rematch done with already? I think it is creative, fun matchmaking. I think Cejudo has done a great job making his brand as large as it can be by walking away at the peak of his powers when he won the second title and it was seemingly sort of in control. Him coming back is creative, fun. It just seems to be the perfect fight to make in this scenario because it gives Volkanovski a potential new Hall of Fame name to add on his resume if he wins, and he should be the favorite. So I don't think it's one of those situations where it's a more difficult fight. I think it's a unique, special fight, Luke, in this case. Why do you hate that so much?
What is the difference in your mind between a unique fight and a special fight, since you said there's a difference between them?
Did I say there's a difference between those two words?
Well,
I think I said it's a unique fight.
Help me understand. So here, this is just what I'm up against. I get with the Henry Cejudo fight why there's momentum behind it, to borrow your description earlier. And the reason why is largely, as best I can tell, an argument about possibility and marketing hype that doesn't have much to do with what could actually happen. Folks say he's got a shot to beat Volkanovski. Okay, how? What is the path to victory for Henry Cejudo? Because what it looks like to me is that he's waving a flag out there saying, pay attention to me on the sidelines. Yes. It's an interesting moment. He does have the great pedigree, but I've yet to see someone connect the dots to the next phase, which is, of the 5 names I read, why is his name the one likeliest to attain victory? I haven't heard that.
It allows it to look, even though I could make a great case to why he should be in this fight, in the discussion of winning this fight, right? Even though you give him kind of no chance in a lot of ways. And I think you were wrong on that, and that's fine. We got to see it play out. It's a lower risk option for Volkanovski, but yet, in terms of a last-minute thing, it's suddenly a huge deal. Cejudo's a big name, and we've never seen someone attempt to become a 3-division champion. I think he's just, meaning Henry, has carried the curation of his brand and the control over it so perfectly in trying to take back any possible leverage you can get when you're in the star center. When you get your moment, he became a 2-division champion. You don't have a lot of leverage in this pay-per-view era, Luke. This was a nice leverage play by him. It's not a huge risk because he's so small for Volkanovski, where it's like, I want to stay in line, and it's sort of an event at that regard. And Volkanovski should win, even though I do like Cejudo's chances to compete in there. It's just perfect, Luke, because it doesn't disrupt the overall flow. The point of that is, I love me. some Josh Emmett. But do you think he's deserving of a title shot right now? I think the answer is no.
No,
I love me
this is
some,
a title shot under injury conditions.
I love
which
me
is very
Korean
different.
Zombie, but I don't think he's necessarily deserving right now of this title shot either, because there's no one sitting there raising their arms saying, you know, I've been looked over. I don't think you need to go to the level of bringing in Oliveira. I don't think you need to do anything like that. I think Cejudo is the perfect player for this. And Luke, I think you need to wake up to the idea that Volkanovski is the smallest featherweight that Cejudo can fight. Cejudo's wrestling is world-class, as we know, but his mind and his ability to adapt and game plan, Luke, he's in that fight. He's in that friggin' fight.
These are just statements you're making that don't mean anything. His ability to do that, you're just saying words without specific references to evidence of him actually accomplishing these things.
You didn't see that 3-fight stretch he went on when he became kind of like a...
I'm not going to say that stretch aged poorly, because that's not true, but it has not... Marlon Moraes was beating him up until he wasn't, and we know what's happened to him since. Granted, Henry was the first one. It was a tremendous turnaround, up a weight class, blah, blah, blah. I get the whole story. It's amazing. What did it to TJ, hard to say exactly what that was given the weight cut, but certainly it was a strong moment for him. And then against Dominic Cruz, that's amazing as well. He's a formidable fighter, but I'm not sure what you see in there that tells you he's going to give a guy like Volkanovski trouble.
I see adaptability.
It's a totally different ballgame.
When you're fighting Volkanovski, you need to be either on his level IQ-wise, which we found out in the end Max was able to mix the fact that he's all-time great in terms of smartness with his physical advantages and compete in there. You have to be on that level if you're not a big slugger or you're not, you know, this one specific thing. I think Henry Cejudo's on that level.
I think looking at a guy like Volkanovski, as big as he sort of naturally is, he's a smaller guy, but in terms of his power and his strength, and thinking a smaller guy is the guy to beat him. I actually think it's the bigger guy is the guy to beat him.
I could see him outworking him. I could see him pushing a pace that he would never be the favorite. I would never pick him to beat Volkanovski, but to act like this would be a one-sided mismatch and maybe shouldn't happen, I think that's the miss on there.
All right, so let's talk about some of these other ones here, these names that got put in the list. You like Henry Cejudo as the top option. I think would that be a bigger fight from a box office standpoint than Charles Oliveira going down a weight class?
Slightly bigger, yes.
But they're pretty comparable.
It would be pretty comparable because it's champion versus champion. I know Cejudo's an ex-champion, but still, it's that idea that he never lost the belt. He went away on his own terms. Now he's coming back for a third division. That sells just as well as, oh crap, Charles Oliveira's on this one hell of a run. He's, you know, kind of cementing his own all-time greatness here. What would a win over Volkanovski look like? Whether they did it at featherweight and try to cut down and take advantage of this momentum he's on, or whether they did it at lightweight so it was less of a risk for Volkanovski at short notice. You know, meaning he's not going to give up his title. He's just trying to dare to be great. I would give that the second option for me because it's such a marquee fight.
I think Oliveira would give Volkanovski some serious problems.
Oh yeah, I think that's why you would almost do that at lightweight, because you respect everything Volkanovski's accomplished,
right,
and you're not telling him put up your belt against such a dangerous guy.
So you don't want to send him down to 145, even though it's a more competitive fight. Perhaps you don't want to send him down to 145.
If Volkanovski beat Oliveira for the lightweight belt, then we're talking about, you know, someone all-time special.
So that leaves Emmett, Zombie, and Rodriguez. Their existing place in the rankings is Zombie is sitting at 4. You have Emmett sitting at 6, and you have Yair sitting at 3. Yair just lost to Max, however, somewhat controversially. Chan Sung Jung, not in the running, obviously.
Well, why do you say obviously? He was the first name that jumped out because he had interest. Volkanovski had interest.
Man,
UFC seemed to have interest.
At all.
I'm not saying I want that fight, but if they're going to treat this, Luke, as a let's just put a Band-Aid on and keep the event going, then maybe Korean Zombie's the name. So if you're just trying to keep Volkanovski busy and give him a title defense, and you're not looking to overly book this into something bigger than it doesn't need to be, Volkanovski, then it is Zombie in there, Luke.
So Zombie got the big win, the rebound over Dan Ige. I guess the question you also have to ask yourself is this question about who should replace who used to be a lot easier 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, when the pay-per-view model was what it was, where it was highly volatile, it was strongly based on star power, it would change dramatically month to month depending on who was on the card, you had a little bit of an easier time understanding the UFC's options. If there was a strong standout number one contender, they obviously would go in that direction, usually. But if it wasn't super strong and then there was another name circulating that was big, and this is not exclusively true of UFC, this is true generally of promoters who have that kind of model, but I'm just pointing out now with the ESPN model, if you're the UFC, are you saying to yourself, well, wait a second, do we really want this to be like the big sales item on this card? Or do we just want to reward someone who hasn't gotten a title shot yet, who's kind of been waiting a while? Do we want to just create a bunch of sizzle for the pay-per-view audiences? I think the UFC's positioning here in terms of what they want based on the opponent should drive some of the discussion about which direction they'll go.
I agree with you. If they feel that they don't need, if this isn't a card that they need to double down on to get pay-per-view buys, and let's be fair about the reality of where they're at in their financial deal, you see the reporting from the guys like John Nash. What do they get, Luke? A base of the equivalent of a 500,000 sale pay-per-view in terms of the guaranteed money from ESPN.
500,000 buys.
The equivalent of 500,000 buys from ESPN. So there are cards now, Luke, where you don't have to break glass in case of emergency. So if they just want to move the chains, and this isn't one where they're aiming to really get a big payback from, then that's why Korean Zombie makes the most sense there, Luke. He's not going to be favored. He's going to make a fun fight the best he can. He's going to lose. But Cejudo is the fun play.
Cejudo is the fun play. All right, I'll tell you what I like, and no one seems to like it. I grant that this is not a popular idea.
Are you going to say Josh Emmett?
I am going to say Josh Emmett. And the reason why, Korean Zombie to me, it's like, dude, he got the Dan Ige win is nice. It's a quality win. But there's nothing in there that would tell you he would give Volkanovski any trouble. And more to the point, he got beat by Brian Ortega, so no. And then you got the other name was Yair Rodriguez. That's an interesting one, but
He just lost.
He just lost. And here's the problem. As much as he gave Max Holloway fits, and he did, and I do think he would give, depending on where it was situated, I think he could give a guy like Volkanovski fits, but the problem is the wrestling. I just feel like Volkanovski would take him down at will and grind the fight out there. That's not that interesting to me. Josh Emmett, I don't think can beat Volkanovski, but the reason why I said it is, one, his time in the sport is limited. It's extremely limited. He's 35, 36.
And he's figured out right now how to be as great as he can be, getting through all those injuries.
That's it. This is Josh Emmett at his absolute best, or pretty close to it, give or take. Him trying to get in an opportunity like this, I totally understand. And I do think over time, Volkanovski's defensive awareness, he doesn't really ever positionally overcommit or get out of position. I think that would be a big deal over time against a guy like Emmett, who blitzes into position a lot. I think that would wear out its welcome over time, and I think Volkanovski would win. But early on, I actually do think that would be pretty competitive. So for me, if you don't have a need to sell it big time, and maybe you do, but I don't think that they do, you can do right by the division by you keeping a featherweight. You give a shot to a guy who, you're right, doesn't deserve it. I'm not arguing that he does, but I think you can make it competitive and fun. Does have some danger there. He does have big power. You would agree he has big power. It's not as sexy as Henry Cejudo. I'm not saying that it is. I just feel like it's the right play to do.
Will the decision here sway anything in your mind in terms of what the UFC looks at Volkanovski as a brand?
Yeah, it will. It will tell me a lot.
Like they could,
and also what
they could reward him by Cejudo. Cejudo could be his reward. Like Volkanovski's already fought the hard fights and grounded it out and won those. He kind of deserves to get the treatment that Usman got with the rematch with Masvidal.
So Cejudo was doing something interesting. You can't sit on the sidelines and be like, fuck you, UFC. But if you sit on the sidelines and then you kind of just wait for the big fish to drop, and so you're like, oh, I'm going to do you a favor. Also, 145, he doesn't have to make weight nearly as difficult. He can make 145, Henry Cejudo, I would imagine, relatively easily. And so for that reason, you would just drop in, I'll do you a favor, I'll do you a solid, Uncle Dana. Yeah. That's a little bit different. So if they go that direction, it will also tell you, obviously, what they think about him.
Now, if Henry gets that fight, it's red panty night in the Albarracin household. You know what I mean? That guy,
he's going to send us so many drunk beats.
Yeah, real quick, do you know what name we're missing from this discussion who would be perfect right now?
AJ McKee?
No, Zabit.
Zabit, yeah.
Good old Zabit. I saw him on Instagram. He's a hairy bastard. I love that guy. Can he? Will he?
You're a little higher on Zabit than I am. I think Calvin Kattar has.
I'm Delta 8.5 on Zabit. Believe that, all right? You know, I love that man. Look, I think he could win the championship if he wasn't so not coming back right now. You know?
How many milligrams per gummy on those Delta 8s you're chomping
on? All liquid nitrogen here, Luke. All right,
is that right?
Yeah.
All right, so guessing which way the UFC will go with this.
I guess they're going to go the Korean Zombie. I guess they're going to just say, look, we don't need to overdo this. We don't need that event right now. We'll find a home for Cejudo, and they will eventually. They'll find the right fight. Maybe it comes after, let's say, what if Petr Yan finally puts his stamp and hold on the bantamweight division that we all think he could. Even though it's loaded, there's a bunch of deserving people. I think Jan's going to be the last man standing. Is that a year from now, and then you make Cejudo versus Jan? That'd be a big fight.
You could do that. Also, by the way, interestingly, on this card, it's 272 that we're talking about here. This one will be at the T-Mobile Arena on March 5th. It's currently scheduled to have the featherweight and the bantamweight titles up for grabs on the same card. Obviously, Sterling is going to fight Petr Yan. If Volkanovski stays on that, you probably do need some help selling that, which makes Cejudo's chances of getting picked a little higher.
You know, Oliveira, It's like there's too much business to do at lightweight to
Totally.
take him out of that.
And by the way, he could get hurt going down there too.
I know, and it's like, do they really want the potential reality? I mean, do you think Volkanovski can beat Oliveira at lightweight? He wouldn't be favored. It would be an uphill battle, but do you think he can beat Oliveira?
Can he beat him? Yes, he can beat him. I would not favor it, but I think he can beat him. Yeah.
Do you think Volkanovski would take the offer from the UFC to fight for the lightweight title and just say, look, if I lose, I lose. I'm still
Yes.
the featherweight king.
Not a doubt in my mind. Not a single solitary doubt in my mind. In part because he's a competitor, in
wants
part
that
because he's a
smoke.
businessman.
Yeah, but like us, he wants that shit, right?
He wants that smoke.
Yeah.